ka pai ata, ka hapara te ata, ka koroki te manu, ka wairori te kutu, ko te ata nui, ka horaina, ka taki te umere, he pō, he ao, ka awatea.
Mātangi tēri ka rua tī, ka noho mai taku tito rere, ka rauna, ka noho mai te kiwi, he pō he waitaki no pino pāka huria mai. Kei anda whetu, kei anda marama ko titi au e. Ere rā i roka te peka, tōroro, wiwi wawa eke. Kia manu kia tau ti hei Māori ora. Ko reira, mai tahu, wai taha, Ngāti Māmoe, Maraka. Ko reira, o tēnei mihi, o te tepu, o te kaunihira, wai taha. Ko reira, e mihi atu tēnā rā koutou nā pū waitako tō tātou matua tipona. Tuatahi ka me nui ki te mihi atu ki tō tātou matua nui te raki, ko e te timataka me te whakaute ko tau katoa. Ko reira ka mihi au ki te kai humai o ka mea pai katoa. Ka mahara mātou ki a rātou kaitua ko wehi tō wairua. Ko reira e koutou rā o ia marae, o ia iwi, o ia waka, haere rupe ki tāro te whānau i a tānei koutou tārai, haere atu rā. E ka hoki nā maumahara tia mō tō whānau whanaunga. E haere atu rā mō tō taua, kaumātua e Elaine Dell, mō rapa ki o te raki whakaputa, te tai tokerau nāpuhi tonu, mō tō e te nāpuhi tonu. Nō reira, ka hoki nā maumahara tia mō tō Rosina Hicks, Kāti Huirapa, mō tō Arowhenua te runa. Nō reira, o nā mate haere atu rā ki te pāta whakawairua e takoto i rangi Māori rongi tō Whaka, hoi atu tō Whaka ko tō tārai haere atu rā. Nō reira koutou rā o te tepu, o nā manuhiri a tuaraki, e nau mai haere mai o te pātawhi tō te kohaka kai a waro no maru o moka tere, moka whakaruru hau o nai tuahuriri. Nō reira, e mihi atu ki a koe o te taua, te kaumātua e o vet, Judge Lewis. Nō reira, mauri a mai e whakaako ki te kaupapa nui, o te kaupapa taio. Whakaora Healthy Harbour, mō whakaraupo. E tū mai me tō whānau tautoko, mihi atu. Koutou rā, te kai whakahaere, e te tūmaki, e mihi atu tēnā kōrua, e koutou rā, a tēnā koutou, e mihi atu kia koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Kia ora, and thank you for that to Karakia, Councillor Davies, excuse me, and also Te Nuku for your meeting. So this is the 568th council meeting, and we do have a quorum. I just note that paper 8.4 on PT and your agenda has been replaced, and I think councillors would have seen the replacement item. That's a straight out replacement, 1 for 1. And I would note that David Hill, I can't see David online, but he could be joining us. So David Hill, local democracy reporter from North Canterbury News, is online. I've had 2 apologies, one from Councillor Robinson and one from Councillor Cranwell, and I don't think we have any other apologies for today. I have not been advised of any conflicts of interest, so we'll go to 4. And unfortunately, John Minto has withdrawn from the public forum. John has been waylaid due to weather conditions and flight delays coming out of Wellington, so that's unfortunate. So going to 4.1.2, John Thacker is going to, he's here to speak to us today regarding buses, in particular when cruisers are in Lyttelton, and we'd like Environment Canada to put a bus from Lyttelton to Governor's Bay to Cashmere. So welcome, John. Welcome, John. You have 10 minutes. Yes, John.
That's where you can speak.
So, John, I'll just give you your introduction. So thank you for coming, and you have 10 minutes to speak to us. We'd like the opportunity at the end of that to ask questions of clarification. So it's over to you. We'll give you a wee bell I'll try to give you a wee bell at 9 minutes and that gives a minute left. So wait, over to you. Your button, John. Push your button.
Oh, thank you. Some of you probably know me. I do put in quite a few submissions on different things with City Council and with ECAN. And my background was a biosecurity officer with ECAN up until just after the earthquake. And one of the reasons why I'm speaking today, and the main reason, is to do with transport, to do with the buses in the crater area. As you know, we've had trouble with the ships, and I've been involved with that as well. It is sort of solving itself a little bit now, thank goodness. The people in Lyttelton were fed up. They didn't want the ships at all. Anyway, getting back to the main thing, I feel that we miss out on the peninsula with a link service that could be run from Lyttelton right round the inner rim of Lyttelton. And this would be really good for tourists because they could actually stop off at places like Onitahi and also Autumn Bradley Park and other interesting spots around the crater, and then they could go by ferry back to Lyttelton. They could do a circuit. In saying that, we've had a bus that's run to Rapaki for a long, long time. And really, that bus initially was a 45-seater, and probably 2 men and a dog would go on that bus at any time. And it was a waste of time. And I actually spoke up at that time and said, why don't we get a baby bus? Why don't we have a smaller bus? Oh, no, we can't do that. So that was squashed. And then eventually they got my bus, which was a little bus. Now, just before the earthquake, the bus was extended to Governor's Bay, and there is a bus stop still at Governor's Bay, and people are waiting for a service that would be a more regular service than the trust could provide. The trust I'm talking about, they ran a bus, but you had to ring the night before and say, I'd like to come on your bus tomorrow morning. And that wasn't really convenient for a lot of people. It did work to a degree, and they took them over to Princess Margaret Hospital. But I maintain that if you could extend that bus from Rapaki round to Governor's Bay and even further over to the Thacker, now that the road is a brilliant road, there's no reason why an electric bus couldn't go through there. When I go to town, and my wife goes to town with me sometimes, we leave the car at the Thacker and we hop on a number 1 bus, and we have all the buses at on hand. But it's just a damn nuisance having to take a car out of the garage just for that short trip. And the same to Lyttelton. When I go to Lyttelton, I've had a lot to do with the Lyttelton Information Centre. Anyway, I feel that we need to reinstate that bus. And I say reinstate because it was running before the earthquake. As soon as the earthquake came, oh, we're not going to have a service anymore. They didn't give it a chance. And I feel that an electric bus would be the way to go. We've got subdivisions in Governor's Bay. There's, at the present time, there are 29 sections being cut off the main road of Governor's Bay. There are far more people in Governor's Bay to go on a bus than there are at Rapaki. Anyway, fast forwarding, I know we've had trouble with buses, and it's all been bad. But in the previous years, we've had carless days, we've had bus contracts that have collapsed, we've had the red bus demise, and I feel that it's time that we re-looked at all this bus situation on the peninsula. Now, my second part was to talk about pest plants. Now, when I worked with ECAN, they called them plant pests, which was totally wrong. And I kept pushing, no, you don't call them plant pests, you call them pest plants. It's the pest on the plant. It's not the plant itself being a pest. Anyway, I feel that we're letting the ball down. it's gone backwards. Take bone seed, for instance. We even had helicopter spraying with bone seed, and that's still being done on Margaret Mihi's Peninsula. I can't remember the Maori name for it. That's still being carried out. It could be got rid of in the Lyttelton area. If you walk from the jetty to Teddington, it's all on the banks up above you. We could get rid of that. The trouble is when it's up high, the seeds bounce down and they'll set seed at the bottom of the cliff. And it's the same with gorse and broom. There used to be roadside clearances, and there used to be clearances of 20 metres or more away from a property that had dense gorse and broom. We take it for granted now. We don't worry about the roadsides, and yet if you go down a lot of the roadsides, the gorse is actually seeding. It gets washed down the drains and ends up down in the valleys, and away it goes. And as you know, it's viable for up to 100 years. We'll never get rid of it, but we can control it. So I feel that more responsibility has to come in getting not just volunteers to do the job, but the council to get their teeth into it a bit more. My daughter is working with the primary industries, and biosecurity are concentrating on things like wallabies. Now, in my opinion, wallabies should have been almost eradicated by now. We had special people in ECAN who were dealing with it, and then they obviously dropped the ball and away they went. So now they're concentrating on that. Now, it's a matter of priorities. Surely a lot of work that's gone before this should be continued. If you can see something for your efforts, it's good. And I think that with bone seed, we can see something for our efforts. I think it's really good. There are other things like burdaisy. I don't know whether it's still prevalent or not around Sumner area, but they keep on going on about this other one, the pig's ear, they call it commonly. Well, at least you can eat that, and the stock can eat it, and it's got water contention, it's containerization in it. But there are lots of other things that could be prioritized rather than fiddling about with all these little things. Valerium is another one. You'll never eradicate valerium. You can see that on cliff faces all around. People grow it in their gardens. I've got it in my garden. It came from over the road from my place. And, you know, you can see the habit of it. You're not going to get rid of that in 100 years either, because the seed is viable through the wind and it blows everywhere. So really, I think it's a wake-up call for us to get more serious about transport. Let's look to the future. I mean, we'll probably have hydrogen-compelled vehicles, and we'll also have probably little boats buzzing around the harbour to our new jetty at Governor's Bay, Diamond Harbour. Oh, that's it. Okay, I better wrap up. Keep going. Anyway, I put on my notes here, flow of the tide, tourists and tourists in and out. They'll appreciate our area much greater if they have easy access around the inner crown. And it'll also give people, businesses, Warden Bradley Park have got a cafe, they could do a bit of business. The money could go towards the park. You've got that beautiful internationally famous garden. You've got the jetty, you've got the walkways going underneath, along the foreshore and so on. I think it's a gem that's uncapped, and I think to get the tourists to do a little bit more around the area, that might be enticing to them. Anyway, thank you very much for having me, and I think I've pretty well covered most things. I'm not quite sure, but I hear that Ros Service is giving up her service to the buses. I don't know who's taking her place, but let's hope that a bigger look at the whole situation is carried out. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that, John. Have councillors got questions or clarification for John? Councillor, no, John. Question.
Kia ora, John. Just a question. Does the trust bus still run? No. Doesn't. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, just I think really great idea. Have you thought about extending it from Lyttelton over to Sumner as well? That would make it a really fantastic loop, and you could tie in with the coastal pathway as well. Sorry.
I think it is something to the future to look for, because I don't think we're looking forward enough. I mean, okay, it's great having these electric buses and everything, but you know, when I go on a bus now, that I think, gosh, this #1 bus is the best taxi in town, and my wife and I are sometimes the only ones that are on the bus. To get people out of their cars is one thing, and I know why. It's convenience to them. They've never known how to get a bus. And I must admit, my wife was very hesitant about going on a bus. And I taught her the ins and outs of it. Now she can go into the terminus and go on another bus if she wants to. She's all fay with it. But we've got to get these people out of their cars. If you count the cars going down the road, 1 per car is the average.
Also, just to ask, so we have an aging population, and there's a certain point in time where you can't take the car anymore. Like, do you have a sense of how many people that might apply to in Governor's Bay? And similarly, teenagers. So, you know, those teens who perhaps not always the safest driving over those quite windy roads as well. Like, what sort of appetite do you think there'd be from teens and elderly who don't have or can't drive anymore from Governor's Bay specifically? Do you have a sense of the numbers?
I don't know the population of Governor's Bay exactly, but I do know there are a lot of retirees over there that would use the bus. They're still capable of walking, but if they knew it was regular going through, I'm sure they would use it. And I'm sure they feel a bit cut off between Governor's Bay and the city because of the hill.
John, we've got two more. I'll let you do that first. We've got two more questions, one from Councillor Burns and one from Councillor East. So when he's settled, yeah.
Kia ora, John. Good to see you too, as an old work colleague. I have a couple of questions just to clarify. Did you involve yourself in the currently ECAN are doing an assessment of, I think, around 1,200 new or species of pest within the Canterbury region, and there was an opportunity for the community to put forward, if you like, something that they thought should be assessed. Have you known about that or engaged in that?
Been before my time. I mean, after my time, I was in ECAN until just after the earthquake, probably a year after the earthquake. I think I left, but would have been 2013. But this is one thing that I think is so important, is to engage the community. I'm in full agreement of what's going on in that way at the moment. But I also think that we should be working alongside the likes of the Ministry of Primary Industries, who were at the show. ECAN weren't at the show. Now, you don't need a big stand at the show, but if they had a stand at the show, they could have had some of the plants that are pests at the show, and people can actually see them and talk to somebody about them. And that's what I tried to do when I was in ECAN. I went to as many shows as I could. I went to all the Gardens, and I didn't get any backing from ECAN to do that at the time, which was disappointing.
Yeah, just a supplementary on that. So would you be available to engage after this, of course, to discuss some of the things that you've identified yourself?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
Thank you. More of a comment than a question, and thank you, John, for your presentation. With respect to plant pests or pest plants, whichever way you want to talk to it, I do support what you were saying about engaging in a program and keeping going. And I think of the wilding pines this problem and issue that we have in the Mackenzie Basin, where we've spent a lot of money eradicating, but only got to a certain point, and then you don't actually solve the problem because it regenerates. So very supportive of what you said there, and it's probably my comments just to our organisation that we need to prioritise some of the pest plants, plant pests.
Since there wasn't a question, since there's not a, John, since there's not a question there, I don't think that it warrants an answer, but if you want to say something to that, that's fine. Push your button.
No, I just wanted to point out that we are under the Pest Plant Accord, and that is needing updating, and that's something perhaps your council could be doing, is getting an update for the Plant Pest Accord. Pest Plant Accord, I should say.
Okay, John, you've raised a number of things in the submission, and so we've got a recommendation that hopefully that we can address some of those things when we get back to you. And the recommendation is on the screen there. Could I have someone please move that? Thank you, Councillor East, and seconded by Councillor Edge. It's Edge, isn't it? It's Councillor Edge. Moved by Councillor Edge, seconded by Councillor East. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against? That's carried. Thank you, John. For your presentation. Okay, now thank you for that. Like, we're moving to 4.1.3, and we're actually welcoming an old friend of the council, the Beck Councillor Lewis, who was a councillor, and Graham. Is Graham here? Is Graham Sumner with you, Evie? He's not, so that's in my notes. But if that other lady would like to come also, come to the table. So this is a presentation from the Whaka Healthy Harbour program, and it's in regard to their program. And do you know, Yvette, that there's 10 minutes here that may not cover all the things you need to say, but we're looking forward to what you have to say. And Petrea will give you a ding at 9 minutes so that we can make sure that you finish out properly. We're having some technical issues, so let's get that sorted out. Before we crank into this event, if you wouldn't mind introducing those that are with you, and then we'll start your time off once you start your presentation.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko I Beck Couch Lewis, aho. I am the co-chair currently with Lyttelton Pork Company with Graham. He sends his apologies today. So you're just stuck with me, I'm afraid. And so with me are the staff from Environment Canterbury that support the Whaka program. So I will do my best not to tell any stories. I promise. I'll just stick to my notes. Right, here we go. So, kia ora, and thank you for the time to present to the Council on the Whaka Healthy Harbour Governance Partnership, which Environment Canterbury is an active contributor through representation at the governance table, being Councillor Vicky Southworth. As a reminder of its whakapapa, which originated from the Lyttelton company recovery plan consent hearing where mana whenua, local catchment community and recreation groups across all tautahi all presented. Through this process, Environment Canterbury and mana whenua led the drive to secure a partnership which was directed through the ECAN hearing process. That's really important to understand that process. That's why I'm saying it. To work together along with the community to create a catchment management plan for a place for all to enjoy and call home. This is a genuine partnership between the 5 organisations to support community restoration across the catchment. The plan has brought about a whole catchment vision where the Whaka partnership is visible, bringing together catchment and Banks Peninsula community groups. The plan has given the mandate to aspire to active, collective restoration visions, such as it sets a way forward for all as the community to ensure that ecological and cultural health of whakataupo as mahinga kai is restored for us and our children after us. This map shows the breadth of the many projects Whaka has supported. So the partnership supports these groups within these maps, these areas as shown. Mihi or work is based upon the principles of kita kitai, from the rocky outcrops to the middle of the moana, and covers the key focus areas within the plan. The partnership funds and assists community groups to recruit volunteers to work on marine enhancement, set and manage track networks, plant native trees, and remove pest weeds. These activities can happen on council reserves as well as public and private lands. Kia ora, over. One of the key focus areas within the plan, this is our plan, is reducing erosion and sedimentation, a major issue on Banks Peninsula. 4 examples of this mahi is at the top left is a project at Rapaki where there are underrunners and tunnel gullies. Planted these gullies is to reduce water flow and with the sediment loads from entering roadside cuttings. Prior to the planting, sediment analysis were completed. Top right is a rather bad site within Corsair Bay. Sediment flowing off the hills along the road, entering the stormwater system out into the harbour. Funded to reduce sediment loss in the property above by establishing fencing and planting. Bottom left is Foley's Creek in Diamond Harbour, which is an important inanga spawning site. Partnership funded the community to establish riparian fencing and planting to reduce sediment loss and improve sediment biodiversity. Bottom right is the mountain bike park trail, where placement of plants is to reduce sediment loss, for example, for roadside and subdivision earthworks. Across the terrestrial habitats, work has been coordinated among partners with volunteers and the community. The key points to note within this area are the areas highlighted are where active projects are underway. A significant contributor to biodiversity and reducing sedimentation erosion is predator control. The partnership has funded Conservation Volunteers New Zealand to coordinate over 7,000 hours of volunteer hours. This is a significant economic value, quite significant. Another key focus area is the pollution of the marine biodiversity, indigenous biodiversity. While mana whenua is across Kita Kitai, the moana is a focus for Rapaki and the wider community. The driver for restoration being the establishment of the Mataitai for the whole harbour. Mataitai is a management tool, a Māori management tool. Apu are leading research and action, including removal of fanworm and undaria while reseeding native kelp. This mahi has developed partnerships and relationships with key marine researchers, organisations and universities throughout Aotearoa. The photo on the top left is an important photo. I think it's an important photo, that's why I'm mentioning it. It's a team of sea cleaners who remove difficult and large rubbish around the harbour, which, you know, people when they have rubbish clean-up days just can't get to, which the partnership funds. So they go out and they gather all those big pieces that are thrown into our harbour. Kia ora.
Speedy, Yvette. Oh, you finished? Keep going, keep going, keep going. Hit your button, hit your button, button.
Fancy forgetting that, Peter. Hey, at this point, I would like to support our Governor, Vicky Southworth, and the Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust, who have already presented to you, to this council, for a targeted rate for biodiversity. As a governor's body, we understand the importance of funding restoration projects. This is our mahi. and this mahi is delivered by passionate, committed people. We know that the mahi goes beyond putting a plant in the ground. Once that plant is planted, we are committed, and we must be committed. An example, a current example of concern is jobs for nature. We don't know future government funding prospects for the ongoing mahi that is required for these projects. We do know is that we need to invest in the mahi already undertaken. If we don't, it would have been for naught. The targeted rate for biodiversity would be a contributor to ensuring all that mahi was not for nothing. It is an investment for the future, for us and for our children after us. I can't emphasise that enough. So thank you for your time today. The long-term plan is an important part of the council mahi. While we partners in the beginning were directed to undertake and oversee the implementation of a catchment plan, the partnership is committed to the kaupapa. We, Te Hapu o Ngāri Whiki, Lyttelton Port Company, Te Runanga o Ngaitahu and Christchurch City Council appreciate the contribution to the partnership from Environment Canterbury. Restoring the Māori cannot be done in isolation. We partners need to be on the same waka and support restoration mahi within Whakatau Catchment and across Timatanga or Rakai Hotu. Kia ora and thank you.
Thank you, Yvette. Sorry for my interruption during that presentation. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of interest around from councillors about this, and there will be tempted to be commentary. But can I just inform you that questions of clarification will be welcome. So, Ian.
Thanks, Peter. And Yvette, I feel I can ask this question because of your experience sitting around this council table. But in addition to the targeted rate that you're asking for, biodiversity targeted rate, if the council was to revisit funding zone committees, rather than funding zone committees, put that money back into funding catchment groups, or in the case of the Greater Christchurch area, the Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust, and therefore your project. Would you think that was perhaps a better use of that money?
Chair, I don't think I'm in the position to actually answer that. Can I just say, though, that the zone committees, the mahi that they contribute to the community and to the wider community is appreciated. And yeah, I think really that is how far I can go.
Very diplomatic, Yvette. Thank you very much. Greg.
Kia ora. Thank you. My question, just to clarify, so sedimentation is obviously critically a serious consideration, obviously, for the moana. Are you liaising with anyone on the city side of the hills where obviously that's an issue for the awa on this side?
Most definitely, and part of the, well, that's one of the advantages of having Vicky actually on the Whaka program, is that liaison between with the Cashmere stream and over on this side with the other zone committee that she's on, but also too, it is the bike park that you saw up on. That's why that example was put there as well. Sorry? Yeah, and I've just been reminded by my staff too that also as well that in terms of sediment erosion, we're just starting to get into that budget and looking at how we can support all the other groups. But most definitely, the catchment of Whakataupu comes over the hill, and I think that's most important to understand. It's not just within the crater rim.
Mihi atu kia koe hoki rā, Yvette, me tō kaimahi.
Just a question, the Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust, do you have a working relationship with them?
Most certainly do. Penny and I have a close relationship on the phone. That's one of the advantages of being the chair, is to that I talk kānuhi to kānuhi with the rangatira of each of the groups that are without there, and the staff work, you know, at that implementation mahi side. So both Penny and I were in discussion around this targeted rate and both supporting each other.
Supplementary. So in understanding that relationship, and you're talking targeted rate, would that mean if there was kind of a mechanism there, say for targeted rate, specifically you know, on Te Pātako Rākai Hautu, would that mean that the mahi, the work that the Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust carries out, and then also Whaka Healthy Harbour, would that mean a closer relationship, you know, with you know, the two entities, and so dividing up you know, the mahi so that we're not kind of doing the same thing twice, or you know, I just think that it's what you're talking about is something that needs to be considered at this table, particularly around that relationship with the Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust, because we've had them in here. So my question, is would you think that that would actually assist in the targeted rate discussion?
First of all, it's not a digression. It's an understanding of the Whaka governance table and the Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust. Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust, a trust that works within the restoration space and is dependent upon funding, and is very dependent in terms of their operational costs, and the targeted rate will be able to help them within that space with all the mahi they do right across the peninsula. Whaka, on the other hand, is a governance table where that funding support comes out to support all the restoration projects like research. And so it can go from research and it can go from Foley's Creek in Diamond Harbour for fencing for biodiversity reasons. The targeted rate for Whaka order would be that with that targeted rate, there is an opportunity there for us to be able to have access to additional funding to be able to distribute throughout as well. But I think that the relationship between the two of us, most definitely, we're not really competing, Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust. They really are targeted to that fund. We want to support that fund and look at how we can enable all those restoration projects to happen. That's the key difference.
Thank you, Vet. Look, I'm going to call this to a conclusion. We're getting into issues that talking about funding, LTP discussions coming up. So I think we'll put a line under it there. But congratulations, Yvette. You've been at this for a long, long time. It's good to see your leadership in this space and the knowledge that you have and the passion that you have for this. So it's really, really nice to see you here today to do what you've done for us. And I'd like to thank you for acknowledging Councillor Southworth, because she's passionate also around this table about the issues that you have there. So well done to her. Now, we've got some recommendations there, and someone would like to move that, please. Thank you, Paul, and seconded by, thank you, Anouk. So all those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff, also, for being here. Right, so going to 4.2, remember about deputations and petitions, and there aren't any. 5 is about extraordinary and urgent business, and there isn't any. 6 is about notices of motion, and there aren't any. And 7.1 is the unconfirmed council minutes for the 25th of October 2023. And they're contained in your agenda between page 70 and 40. Are there any matters of accuracy in that agenda that you would like to bring into account? I know that Councillor McKenzie may have something.
Yeah, just on page 17 and 18, I apparently arrived back in the meeting 9 minutes before I left it.
It's noted. We'll change that to be more accurate. Take your powers away from you. Anybody else? Vicky, are you dogs and dolphins? All right. I'll put the recommendation up there. Thanks. Don't. Staying on. Okay. So agenda item 7.1 confirms the minutes from the council meeting held on the 25th of October 2023, moved by Councillor Mackay and seconded by Councillor Pauling. Yeah, any discussion on that? So there's no discussion. All those in favour, please say aye. And all those against. So that's carried. So we're looking to move to 8.1, which is a council resolution status report. It's on page 41 of your agenda. Any issues of clarification regarding that? We have Petrea here who can provide those. Greg.
It's just an acknowledgement on the action for the adoption of the annual report with the minor changes that were made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Anybody else?
We're on the resolutions report, aren't we? Yeah, correct. Just wanting a verbal from staff regarding one around around the CWMS. Where's my page? Yeah, page 52, and now I'm there. Yeah, regional committee, page 52, just that's still in amber in progress, and I understand that letters to go out. I think that they just thoroughly that they have gone out.
So we'll go to Tim Davey.
Kia ora, Chair. Yes, I can confirm that the letters were sent out on the 17th of October, so that should move to green. Thank you.
Sorry, any council got any other issues in terms of clarity on that resolution report? Being none, we'll put the resolution up. Someone to move that. Thank you, Councillor Pauling, seconded by Councillor Mackay. Any further discussion on 8.1? Not being any. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against. So that's carried. Now moving to 8.2, which is previous committee activities and minutes. Again, Petraea can provide clarifications, or we could seek further clarifications from others, but we'll go to Councillor Edge for the audit, finance and risk. Comment.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I just wanted a comment on a couple of the issues that we discussed at the meeting. On page 58, the 8.2 health, safety and wellbeing update. The key things to note from that discussion was that the committee agreed that a separate health and safety committee was not necessary, and a proactive approach to building relationships with staff to build an organisation or a whole of organisation and safety culture was where we're headed. And in line with the 3 lines of defence, the health and safety wellbeing team's function is to provide support, advice and frameworks, training material and assurance. And there's also some wellbeing champions in staff as well. And then from time to time, incident reports will be given as necessary. There's also a reference there too to the audit, finance and risk terms of reference will be amended just to be more explicit about the relationship of the committee to health, safety and wellbeing. I just wanted to just quickly brief on 8.4 on page 59. Overall, received the Q1 report and the levels of service and key initiatives there and the financial performance. And it was a new format, well received by the committee. The other item, 8.7 over the page, just briefly on page 61. Just a note that there's an additional late entry into that register related to the financial year 2022-23. The external auditors checking on any implications, and we're waiting on an investigation report from them for that. They were key issues.
Thank you. Any other clarity? We can put the resolution up and then move that, and we can, if there's any discussion, we'd have it then. So here we are, Councillor Edge. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Tunkel. Any discussion? Being no discussion, put that to councillors. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, and that's carried. Thank you very much. 8.3. 8.3 is an item about the change of appointment to the Avon, Heathcote, Estuary, Heathcote Trust Board, and David Piranara O'Connell will speak to that. David.
Tēnā koutou ngā kaikauni hira. Yes, this item is with regard to the trustee for Environment Canterbury on the Avon Heathcote Estuary Heathcote Trust. Councillor Diche has tendered his resignation from the position, and therefore council need to fill that vacancy for Environment Canterbury on that trust.
Okay, councillors, we have spoken about this. It's reasonably straightforward, unless there's any clarification regarding that process of David.
Thanks. Whilst I appreciate there was an explanation given of the process earlier in the councillor only time, I obviously wasn't at that councillor only time, and I may have expressed an interest, but I'm happy with the Greg taking the role on. But I think just in terms of process, that if there is a vacancy for any particular function of council, that it needs to be raised as a point in councillor only discussion. So that's my point. Thank you.
Okay, that's point well made, Councillor East. And apologies if your expression of interest in that wasn't noted, but if you weren't available to note it, then I'm not too sure about the process to catch up with you again. But maybe what we should do is make that more fully available to people through email system or something. I'm not sure. So noted for next time. But the resolution we have in front of us has been discussed. Have I got someone that will move that? Councillor Pauling moves that, seconded by Councillor Ward. Any further discussion?
I'll be abstaining.
Sonia, I think you're here too, so come on down. So this paper is the late replacement, well, not late replacement, the replacement for the paper that's in the agenda. Due to more information being available, it is a replacement. I think we've, as councillors, understand that. We've got a reasonably interesting set of recommendations here. And I think what we'll do is just ask Giles and Sonia to work their way through this process, because if you read them, they do seem a bit obscure, but they're not. I can assure you of that. And this is about our ability to actually maintain our public transport function in Canterbury, in Christchurch. The lead time for buses is huge in terms of delivery and those sorts of things. So Giles, over to you.
Yeah, so I'll just, thank you, Chair. I'll just provide a bit of explanation about why the updated paper was provided, and then I'll hand to Sonia to take you through the paper in more detail. The paper relates to the implementation of the Route 7 service uplift, which is the next bus off the bus stop of the rank in terms of PT futures. And as the Chair has said, the lead time for bus ordering is the order of 6 to 9 months. So the intention is to provide that service uplift early in the 2024-25 financial year. When we wrote the paper, we were unclear of the decision timeline that Whaka Kotahi were going to follow to provide their decision and support for their contribution to the funding of the service uplift and the payments to operators. Since writing the paper, it's been made clear to us that no formal decision will come from Whaka Kotahi until probably around August 2024, given the need for the new NLTP to be drafted and approved. So, having had that new information, we've amended the paper to reflect an updated set of recommendations in terms of looking to proceed with the uplift and trying to set out and articulate the small, in our view, financial risk that this presents to the council.
Kia ora. Thank you very much for your time today. So you'll see from the paper, the purpose of this paper is essentially to approve the cost adjustment required for the Route 7 uplift. So funding was allocated in the long-term plan 21-31. Route 7 frequency improvement was due to happen, well, is scheduled to happen in 24-25, so the next financial year. In terms of if this was approved now, essentially through our conversations with the long-term plan, this becomes part of the baseline. So essentially this means that we've agreed to this frequency uplift and covering the cost adjustment. Essentially the cost adjustment is because it's just costing us more. When we originally put the long-term plan together and following PT Futures, that was 3 years ago. So obviously now costs have changed quite substantially. So you'll see there that the cost adjustment from the PT targeted rate perspective is 660,000. In terms of the other recommendation, we're seeking approval to purchase the 5 electric buses now. Any delay essentially in ordering the buses means that it takes us 6 to 9 months to have those buses made and delivered. So that results in quite a significant delay for our customers getting this frequency uplift. So what we're looking for here is to try and make sure that we can get this frequency uplift literally on the ground for our customers as soon as we can. Just to maybe help if I kind of explain a little bit around the costing there. So in terms of Whaka Kotahi funding, so the 51% FAR rate, if we waited till the 31st of August, essentially that would delay potentially the implementation until May 2025. So you'll see that feels and sounds a long time away. The cost that we've got there is the cost that ECAN, if we agree to order the buses now, if we weren't successful in getting the funding, that's the cost of those buses intentionally. It's a little like storage of those buses until we could look at where we could redeploy them on the network. So the costing there doesn't include things that we would normally include to operate a bus. So it doesn't include driver hours, it doesn't include fuel, it doesn't include kilometres, which makes up a large percentage of our contracts. So it's a small risk, but obviously it's one that we want to make clear around what this would mean from a decision perspective. Okay, so in terms of what will customers see from this frequency improvement? So we're looking to move, and we've talked about this quite extensively, our core services to a turn up and go frequency. So that's the 10-minute frequency. So that means on average, if you leave your door and go wait at a bus stop, you're waiting an average of 5 minutes. So that removes the need to pre-plan. It provides a really excellent level of service for customers. And what we're really looking to do is create a really simplistic network for people to use the network more and remove those barriers to actually using public transport. So this was all agreed through the PT Futures business case. This has been approved by all partners. So that does include Whaka Kotahi. So in terms of when we're considering what the risk is there. Just again reiterates, and this was before we made the changes to the paper, but that's the cost adjustment that we're seeking through the recommendation through this paper. And that was just outlining some of the key risks and opportunities that we have here. So recognising the fact that actually will be some in the community that this still feels very slow in terms of our improvements to the network, and also the expectations around how much we're doing in this space and how quickly we're moving in the pace and scale. It would require an informed style of consultation. So there may be some customers who feel that maybe they don't have that ability to provide that engagement and that feedback around what this looks like. So this route is really looking at creating that uplift that we've agreed through the PT Futures program. So it really is the next step in the 10-year investment program that we've already committed to. And that just quickly kind of talks through our next steps. So essentially the next steps would be to look at actually how we inform our communities of this if it was to be approved. We'll work closely with Whaka Kotahi and CCC to minimise any impacts on the infrastructure works that will be happening to put bus lanes, essentially to make this route even more reliable. And you'll see there that we are considering a short route extension at the QE2 side. Well, sure, I've just forgotten the name there. To improve accessibility and essentially improve the terminus that we have at that side of the route.
Look, I think the council, we've been through this in terms of PT Futures and the support for that process. I think this is just the opportunity for councillors to actually ask the questions of you around the resolutions more than anything, because the resolutions, as I said, can feel a bit funky. So questions of clarification around this with Sonia and Giles, and then we'll put the recommendation and then we'll have a discussion about it if we need to. Yes.
Hi, thanks for the paper and the updates that you provided, but I'm just still trying to get my head around this Whaka Kotahi funding. This was in our long-term plan for next year anyway. So why is Whaka Kotahi delaying their? I've reread this paper a couple of times and I'm still confused. How can they just say we're not going to make a decision until August 2024 when this is already a program that we've got in our budgets? Like, this just seems ridiculous.
So in terms of the process that happens to access the funding assistance rate, at the moment, PT Futures is an indicative business case. So that means the funding is probable. So essentially, in order to release that funding, you need to do a detailed business case. So the next step, if we get approval through this process, is that we will submit a single stage business case to Whaka Kotahi, which essentially is that detailed business case, which then means that we get that funding approved. So the National Land Transport Programme, essentially, it would normally be approved in June. I believe there's a delay, which is going to be the 31st of August. I think that's related to the changes that we're going through and then looking at obviously what will happen through the new GPS for land transport. So essentially the process is that we need to apply for a detailed business case in order to access that money.
It's also a reflection of the unaligned planning cycles that central and local government work through. And it's certainly something that we're actively engaging with Whaka Kotahi on, because in the broader sense, talked to a number of councillors about this, is we know that all other things being equal, we need to order a number of buses over the next few years to A, provide service uplift, and B, to replace diesels with electrics. That would be better done if we could do it over multiple years than having to do this process every time we want to buy them with this delay, with several decision makers not having lined up processes. But this is where we are.
I mean, I'm a little bit concerned about this process in terms of having an indicative business case, which has gone out to consultation. It's been talked about so many times. And then how much does it cost to do this next level business case just to say, yeah, we're happy with what was already indicated? Just this process is absolutely ridiculous. And the question I have is, how much time does it cost us to do this next stage of business case just because we're saying, hey, look, you've already approved this, we're just going to go ahead and do it anyway?
So I don't have an exact costing for you. So obviously there is a cost to doing this work. At the moment, with the single stage business case process, we're going through a single stage business case light, and we're able to do that in-house, or most of it. So we do have to, we go outside externally to contractors for our economic case. So I don't have an exact costing, but yes, there is a cost to doing another business case.
I guess one of the issues that we have, Dion, is that the Whaka Kotahi forward will be, like all of us, waiting to see what sort of a style of government we've got around public transport, waiting to see what sort of a fund the National Land Transport Fund is and what it requires, so where this funding comes from, and their absolute support in terms of what we're trying to do here in Christchurch with PT Futures and other stuff with GCP. So we've made, and you've been part, everyone's been part of this decision that we're going to push on with PT Futures. This is a key part of it in terms of this uplift. And I guess the paper's all about what is the risk. There is some. How big is it? It's not that big. But the worst thing that we can have when we're seeing this passenger increase across the network, you know, Waimakariri is increased by 20% in October. The buses from Darfield are full, double-decker buses full. There's more capacity required from Selwyn coming into this into here, and so this is the thing that we're planning on doing. This is the thing that's required. And so I agree with what you said. I think it's crazy, but you know, Whaka Kotahi is their own agency. So, David.
Thanks. 2 or 3 points. Firstly, I'm interested in the last bullet point there on the screen at the moment about a review and a possible termination at QE2. I'm part of a local community group in North Beach that have been advocating for changes to either Route 7 or Route 8 to better service that particular area, and a number of council-run facilities, old residential retirement village, surf clubs and things and the infrequency of the service, particularly even in the weekend, to actually access those areas. So I'm interested in the process that you're going to go through there and whether it's possible to engage with some of the local community out there to perhaps get an outcome that's a win-win. Second point was around the purchase of electric buses. I've had comment from a colleague that works in the bus industry in Canterbury about them not sort of being favoured so much when it comes to purchasing buses. So when we do go to actually purchase the buses, are we going to be privy to the various options that may be available to council to consider, or is that a delegation that staff would consider in terms of purchase?
I think the consideration of your last point there, Councillor East, is the fact that we have a change in the operating model. And we're still, again, waiting for central government to see how it merges from one government to the other and see if that, the sustainable public transport framework is still operational. Where that gets walked back or not, we don't know. But the opportunity to be more consistent in terms of buses is a national opportunity also. It's an opportunity for us to get joined up with other councils, other regional councils that do this, Wellington, Tauranga, Otago, Southland and others, to have a joint look at this. Because as Giles has pointed out, we are going to need a lot of buses in the next 10 years. We need to have like an elevator of buses coming in, and this piecemeal stuff is not helping us, and it's not helping the commitment to do anything other than what we're doing now.
And can we go back one slide, please? Oh, it's just that point there may not meet the expectation of some communities, and that perhaps links into my first point about the possibility of looking at that termination at QE2 and whether there's any possibility of looking at that route towards the end of Route 7 and to be able to communicate with some of the local groups there that have been advocating for a change.
Yeah, so we're really keen to work with the communities and look at essentially what more we can do to meet the needs of our communities. That would go into, we've talked a lot about the detailed business case for rest of networks. That would feed into that process essentially. So at the moment we're delivering the PT Futures short-term programme as agreed, which is why it's stated, like it doesn't actually change Route 7. It's just a frequency uplift at this stage and the route remains as is. We're just exploring the opportunity around QE2 being a terminus area because the Queen's Park terminus at the moment doesn't provide the facilities necessary, from a driver perspective and a customer perspective. And also QE2 would provide another really good key activity centre for us to link in. But again, that would all form part of the detailed business case for rest of network.
So this is questions of the staff to clarify. This is not discussion. Oh, good. So I kind of have a long question. I hope it's not sort of, it probably is a bit crystal ball gazing, but given that the likely outcome of a new government is going to, they've already sort of said they're going to take $2 billion out of the Climate Emergency Response Fund for tax cuts, and that roading's a major consideration, freight, that type of thing. Are we sort of red flagging in our thoughts possible implications of not being supported by Whaka Kotahi going forward, especially in light with what Councillor Swig said about not this just being a one-off, but the procurement process going forward for replacing all of our fleet over time?
Can I have a crack at that? Because I think Councillor Burns is asking you a governance question. The governance role in this is to make sure that we get as soon as possible to the Minister of Transport and make the intentions clear for this area, for GCP, for the Greater Christchurch Partnership. We've made our intentions clear to people that thought they might be ministers at one time and said to them that the bespoke nature of design in Christchurch is for Christchurch, and that we don't want somebody that's got some knowledge of Auckland transport to come down here and tell Canterbury people how to do that. So, Greg, that's a bit of a long answer too, but we are very, very keen, and I was we were Councillor Mayor Dan yesterday, and Mayor Sam last week, and that's the intention. The intention is to ensure that the work that's been done by staff in terms of GCP and PT is supported nationally, and you know there's no bonfire for what we're trying to do here.
I'm just, you know, that's great. And again, it's a bit of crystal ball gazing, but it would be remiss of our strategy team, I guess, not to consider, do we have plan B, C's, that type of thing, if the worst case scenario comes about. That's what I was trying to allude to, I guess.
So I suppose from a staff perspective, we're obviously in regular conversation with Whaka. To date, they've indicated support at an indicative level for PT Futures. The financial decisions obviously notwithstanding. I think the what we're presenting to council today is the next uplift that's planned. At the timing is unfortunate in terms of a political cycle for the first quarter of 24. Going forward, so there is no, from memory, there is no other major decision of this nature that would need to be made before that announcement is made. So the financial exposure and financial risk, whilst we do believe it to be relatively low risk, is also relatively small. What we are working with Whaka on, and there's no, you know, there's no indication that we will make progress, but we will continue to push, is to try and work through how do we get a longer term and sustainable funding stream or approval stream to the overall programme of bus replacement and service uplift that this council is committed to. And clearly that can be amended depending on decisions that are made within central government, changes in fare rates, with changes in appetite for decarbonisation, etc.
Can I just clarify one thing there? So you're saying, and I tend to agree in the context of public transport, that the financial risk is relatively small. So what we're sort of saying is 400,000 in that particular core activity is relatively small, not 400,000 relatively small. Right, thank you.
And 400,000 in the context of what we spend on PT, and that's 400,000 if we were to put the buses in storage for a whole year. And if we got to the point where we couldn't use them, either we couldn't redeploy them or weren't allowed to use them on the service uplift, I'm pretty confident there would be another PTA around the country that could take them ultimately. So that's 400,000 for a full year in storage, which clearly is not something that we're anticipating happening.
Two very brief questions, if I may. Just so I'm absolutely certain about this, the PT targeted rate is based on capital value.
In Christchurch, yes. In Waimak, it's per unit, urban, rural.
So is there an expectation that this uplift in service on Route 7 is going to have a material effect on the capital value of the properties in the areas it serves?
It may well have an impact. I don't think it would be material, but I'm not a valuation expert. But clearly, the programme of work that's been agreed has been designed to uplift all the core routes over a period of time, starting with those where there's the biggest bang for the buck. So actually taking those routes in order, but then to have a core network established, then to do the work to fill in the other parts of the network.
Yeah, thank you. Just so I can be really clear with this, so we're looking to approve additional funding because of a cost uplift because of inflation, etc. But in fact, and we only need to approve that bit of uplift because we've already got our side of the funding locked in through our existing long-term plan. But in reality, in terms of Whaka Kotahi, we're talking about the whole of their 51% for the uplift for all of the match funding through the LTP for this route. So actually it's the whole uplift is potentially, well, that's why you're saying the alternative is we actually don't do the uplift if we don't get the match funding. It's not just about not having the new buses, but it's about not having the uplift at all. Okay, which would be very disappointing given that, you know, this is our key mechanism for improving.
I think that's an understatement, very disappointing, seeing that Whaka Kotahi are the people that are encouraging us to do PT Futures and do this piece of work. So there's going to have to be a big mismatch somewhere in terms of where they're heading with this. And I mean, does that give you confidence? So I'm not sure.
So the implications of this are, if they don't approve, then the uplift will not go ahead. So the service on Route 7 would stay exactly as it is. We would then put the buses, technically we would put the buses into storage, and then we would look to redeploy them and replace 5 existing diesel buses in advance of the normal replacement cycle. So they wouldn't go to waste, but they wouldn't be the optimal use of that investment. But given your comment of where we are, that's why we believe the risk is low, not non-existent, but low.
Yeah, firstly, thank you for this, and thank you also for your answer to Councillor East about the detailed rest of network business case stuff, because I know that we've got similar issues in Horseville, of course, with the, you know, massive subdivision development and parts of Horseville not connected to Route 7 and stuff like that. But so yeah, it's good to know we're going to get to that work eventually. And I just got 2 other things. The other thing that's rolling around in my mind, which I know that Stuart did come to our Horseville Residents Association meeting, and we talked about this a little bit, but the Whaka Kotahi roadworks and the CCC work they're doing along Lincoln Road and that Highway 75. Just tell us a little bit about that again. That's not going to impact on this too much, or can you just give us some confidence around it?
So it will have an impact. We don't yet know what the impact will be. It's still in tender, so we haven't got an analysis of the delays we expect. But actually, if we kind of flip it round, so in transport planning, there's a saying, you're not stuck in traffic, you are traffic. It's a really good opportunity to get people into using the bus. Essentially, if you took 50 cars off the road and each one of those people, normally single occupancy, use the bus, essentially your delays would be minimised substantially. So what we're looking at doing is working very closely with Whaka Kotahi and CCC on the scheduling around the infrastructure improvements, because the irony of a PT improvement delaying PT, to look at ways that we can mitigate it, but also use it as a really good proactive mechanism for actually, essentially congestion is a really good reason to start using public transport, because you can actually really help solve this, and we can try and make the journeys more reliable and quicker. We also know that without this uplift, essentially, you will have more substantive delays. So essentially, if we kept the 15-minute frequency, we would see quite large delays.
Hopefully that will help with the Whaka Kotahi's decision to support this day. And my last one is, I know that recently we got some other funding to buy some buses, and we had that transition clause. I can't remember what it is about the potential ownership of them in the future. Has this been included in these 5 buses that will be purchased? I can't remember the exact name of that thing, but can you know what I'm talking about, Giles?
Sorry, I don't know the exact answer to that, but no, I don't believe it has at this stage.
So I think this is recognition that the SURF funding required us to include that clause. Clearly, that's a matter of negotiation with the operators on an ongoing basis. But SURF funding came with a requirement for that clause to be put in. It's something we continue to explore.
Right, I'm going to put the recommendation up there, give councillors an opportunity to have a discussion on that, and I've already got somebody that wants to move this, Councillor Davies. Got someone, Councillor Swiggs, wanting to second that. So an opportunity now Joe, do you want to speak to this?
So yeah, I'd urge my fellow councillors and the chair to support these motions. We know that we have issues out east with regard to indirect bus routes, reliability, the loss of services that people love, like express buses to our eastern reaches. And I sincerely hope that we consider these through both the regional public transport plan, the next long-term plan, and also the implementation of public transport futures, particularly with regard to the rest of network development and implementation. And as referred to today, we really need to connect our councils and communities into the connector route enhancements. But this decision today is an investment into some of those communities to uplift Route 7's frequency, particularly to 10 minutes from 7 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. and to do this with state-of-the-art electric buses. Out east, Route 7 is actually a relatively direct route. It services communities from Parklands to Queen's Park, Burwood to Darlington, Shirley to Richmond and Estuary, and more broadly, this bus also services two hospitals, both Christchurch Public and Burwood, and we know the issues that we have had with transportation to those places of regional significance. To turn up and go on this direct route, this is worth the investment, and this is a win for the East. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Wicks?
I support this as well, and I fully agree with what Councillor Davis has said, but it's also a win for part of our city that is also growing very, very rapidly. And I am disappointed in a way that we can't do more at this stage for that area of the city that is growing very rapidly, because we're hearing from our communities out there that these bus routes aren't connecting to the places where people are living. And that really goes to me to say that our whole planning system is a bit broken in terms of where we're putting subdivisions and how we develop our cities in terms of public transport and other needs in that space as well. But I'm also sort of concerned here from this paper and from the comments that we've heard around this model being broken from the funding point of view. And in my opinion, it might not be. Some people might argue it's not broken, but I'm saying it's broken. I just think it's absolutely ridiculous that we do indicative business cases and then have to go back and do other business cases where we've talked about these things. I know this has been talked about for many, many years, and I think there needs to be a better way to have certainty around these processes so that we don't keep kicking the can down the road and that we don't keep delaying things and don't sort of have other excuses why things can be delayed. But in saying that, I'm very happy that this is going through. I'm really happy that we're able to get some more conversations with our communities, because the more that we hear from our communities around these issues, we will have a better network in the future. So good, lots of work to do, but really cool to have this one going through.
Well, thank you for bringing this, and I just think it's so important that we continue to improve our public transport. It's great to know that we do have the support of our communities, that we're being constantly asked to do more. I totally concur with Councillor Swiggs about the sort of frustration that we can't actually do more, and some of those little tweaks that could make so much difference. I know that staff are looking at how we might be able to do that in the future in a more general way, because we get asked from right the way across the city about things that we can do to facilitate people accessing the network. And it will be interesting to see what happens, as this is going to be the first, one of the first things we go to the new government for. And I just hope they continue to support and recognise what our city and the Greater Christchurch area are asking for. Kia ora.
Really short, just really tautoko what Councillor Davies, Councillor Swiggs, Councillor Southworth have said. Totally agree with them and looking forward to this. So, kia ora.
I think probably you needed somebody to speak on the other side, having had everybody else in favour of it. So look, I've got concerns about, not so much about the extended service, and I take advice from the urban councillors who think this is a good service, but I have got concerns about how this is going to be funded by our ratepayers on capital value rather than through a UAGC, because as Councillor Davies has said, this is a win for the East, but in fact it's the people probably in the West who end up paying for it. And I just, and so I've got real concerns that we are providing these services without actually considering who the real beneficiaries are, and therefore who it is who's paying.
I would just like to comment, and I forgot to mention this before. So I lived on the number 3 route, which goes out west, and that is the first of the routes that has a 10-minute frequency. So actually those paying out in the west do have access to the best service currently, and it's a fantastic service, and it really is quite a game changer in terms of connecting with the system when you can just rock up to the stop and you know there's going to be a bus sometime within the next 10 minutes. So the that notion of those multiple routes having that level of service is a really good one, and I think it will see a really big patronage uplift.
Yeah, my view is that everyone's a winner. Everyone's a winner in this because of the commitment that previous council made to the climate emergency. I think everything that we can be doing to ensure that as a regional council we are taking this serious, so our communities have confidence in the decisions we make. I think this is yet another one. So, kia ora, thank you.
Right, look, we'll wind this up. We've had enough support for this, and go back to you, Joe, if you want to say a final word on this. You're happy? Are you happy, Councillor Swiggs? Okay, I mean, my point with this is a difficult procurement thing to step through with your partner when your partner takes another road. But I think we've just got to be big enough to stand up and do this. In fact, I said to Giles the other day, why don't we just put an order in for 20, actually, you know, and stagger them when we need them, so at least we know they're coming. So that's good. All right, so this has been moved by Councillor Davies and seconded by Councillor Swiggs. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against? And that's carried. Ian, you abstaining, or you happy, or where are you with that?
I think I'm abstaining. I didn't vote.
A highly productive 8.5, highly productive plan. Is this you, Tim? Jeff? I've got Jeff Smith here, but I don't see anyone called Jeff Smith in the room. Unless you've changed your name, Patrick. All right, let's just go on with this then. So that's pretty straightforward. It's been around. There was a question from Councillor Edge about land classes. I think we can give you that clarification. I don't think it's gonna substantially affect what we're trying to do here. So if everyone's happy with that and you're happy with that, Grant, I think we'll just push on with this.
You know, I'm happy with that. It was kind of more to do with also on the bottom of page 87 about other values and later on, but it's another discussion. I think it'll have another.
And this could get quite political too in the next week while, so it just see where we're at with that. So the resolution, will put the resolution up. Move on. Could I get it over for that, please? Councillor Ward and Councillor Sunkel. Moving second. Any further discussion on that? Being no further discussion, all those in favour, please say aye. All those against? And that's carried. So we'll move on to 8.6, which is local government representation review on Māori representation, and David is going to speak to that.
Kia ora no, councillors. This representation review is a process required by council under the Local Electoral Act 2001. Earlier this year in August, council took a decision around your voting approach. So that was the first decision that you've made in regard to this representation review process. The second decision that council is required to make before the 23rd of November, which happens to be tomorrow, is whether you accept or not the establishment of a Māori constituency, which then feeds into the subsequent processes of the representation review, if that was to be the case. We have, in assisting you in informing this decision, we have gone out to all Papatapu Runanga and Te Runanga Ngaitahu and sought their views on Māori constituency. And as you see from the paper, 7 of the Papatapu responded to that correspondence, indicating that they did not support the establishment of a Māori constituency, which is consistent with most representation reviews since the advent of them. We also went out to a number of Mātai Whaka rōpū that you'll see also in the paper across the region, not just in Christchurch. And just an additional clarification, we had one acknowledgement from one of those groups acknowledging that they'd received the correspondence from us and that they would endeavour to get back. But we had no formal response from any of the Mātai Whaka groups that we engaged with. Other than that, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. I think we've been pretty clear and consistent over the last week while about our position on this as a council, but it's been reinforced by the Papatipu Runanga. And it's unfortunate that Mātai Whaka didn't get back to us, and I don't know if you want to speak to that, Nook, do you? After the resolution. Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to ask a question, like how much notice, how much time did the Wakamata groups have to respond to us? Because I know it's quite complex getting a decision and response and so on. So did we give them sufficient time?
Yeah, there was, we had 2 weeks. There was a 2-week period because it took us some time to actually get the contact details for all of those Mātai Whaka groups. We found them utilising Facebook, most of which were private groups. Then we had to track down contacts for those, which we went through. So it took quite some time to establish the context for those. This has been a useful exercise because this has enabled us to have better contacts for Mātai Whaka groups for the long-term plan engagement as we go into that. But yeah, unfortunately, because of that, we were short on time and accept that.
Kia ora, thanks, Dave. I've got a couple of questions, and the first one just follows on from Councillor Southworth. So, given the significance of that decision, do you think 2 weeks is a reasonable amount of time?
It's not ideal in the sense of going out on this, and likewise, even the time for Papatipu Runanga was particularly short. That was confounded by our understanding of when our representation review was actually up, which was the start of this process, which put us behind the 8 ball to some extent in rolling out the subsequent pieces. So it's not ideal from a time frame, but we've made best endeavours to reach out and engage.
Kia ora, thank you. And I have a question. I wonder, do we have any statistics on the population within Waitaha of Māori that don't identify as being Ngāi Tahu? And by the way, I just want to say too, oh no, I'll let you answer that first.
Ka pai. So we've got statistics from the 2018 census. We were hoping to try and get some updated statistics from the most recent census, but that's not yet available. The caveat I would put on the 2018 is particularly around Māori statistics. They are not reliable, and Statistics New Zealand recognises that. But in saying with that caveat, there is a total Māori population in Canterbury of 53,070 people. Of that, 32,778 are non-Ngāi Tahu. That is 62%. And 20,292 Ngāi Tahu resident, which is 38%. Of the total population, 11.1% of the population at 2018 were of Māori descent. I have also made a request, and the information hasn't come through because separate to Statistics New Zealand, of course, Te Runanga o Ngāi Tahu has a tribal register who have all of their resident people and can give us the total number that they hold in Canterbury, which is probably a more reliable number than the one in the 2018 census, but I don't have that figure to hand.
Just a final question, and you might not be able to help me, but can anyone help me? What was the ratio of councillors in South Canterbury to population? No, for population 1 to something or other? 35, 37,000? 32,000, thank you. Good.
We've got, is Councillor Swakes, did you have a question?
I mean, I just wanted to pick up on point number 13, just for my understanding. What was the main themes coming out of the Runanga's feedback on why they were against us having a Māori constituency?
The main and consistent theme and overarching, there was really the main theme was they wanted to continue to work with council on bedding in the Ngaitahu, the Canterbury Regional Council Ngaitahu representation arrangement, i.e. the two Ngaitahu councillors. They felt that the focus on that and working through that governance arrangement, bedding that in, was from their perspective the priority focus, and further consideration of Māori constituencies could be considered at the next review.
But the two aren't mutually exclusive, are they? Okay, thank you.
Just regarding representation and then the voting at the other end, my understanding is that it's only people that are on the Māori roll would vote in the local government. So how does that relate to the figures that you're using from the stats department? Because not every person who identifies as Māori in a statistical survey will be on the Māori roll.
That's correct. So the number on the Māori roll will differ again to those because, of course, of all of those Māori, some will be on the general roll, some will be on the Māori roll. I don't have the Māori roll figure to hand. With regard to who can stand as a councillor, that is not limited to being of Māori descent. Any person can stand to be the councillor of the Māori constituency, but the voting populace that vote for that come from the Te Tai Tonga electoral roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In terms of democratic processes as to how and the difference between a Māori roll, should we vote for one, and the current process of appointing or electing Ngāi Tahu councillors, how many of those who identify as Ngāi Tahu within Canterbury actually get to vote for the current process of appointing Ngāi Tahu councillors to this council, and how many of those people would effectively be able to vote if we had dedicated Māori electorate constituency, sorry.
So if we start with the electoral part of the system, so if council chose to establish a Māori constituency, that the process for voting that councillor in is the same voting process as the elected members of council are voted through on. The reason that council needs to take the decision on whether to establish the constituency before the 23rd of November is because if you establish it all of the population, the Te Tai Tonga electors move out of the general constituencies into that ring-fenced Māori constituent. So then it changes the numbers of the remaining 14 constituencies. And then on that basis, you then go through the next stage gate of representation review, where you're looking at the population and the plus or minus 10% rule, and all of those things get taken into account. So that's affecting the that's how that vote works. Of course, the process of appointing the Ngaitahu councillors follows a separate process, as you know, through the Papatipu Runanga, engaging with their whānau in informing how those two Ngaitahu councillors will be appointed. Which is not strictly a voting process in the same way that the council elections take place.
So if and I don't want to talk specifically about the Ngaitahu or Canterbury Regional Council, but in general terms, if you establish a Māori constituency, then it's in terms of what we understand to be the democratic process. That's probably a more democratic process than the current appointing Ngaitahu councillors. So if my neighbour, who happens to be Southland Ngaitahu, wanted to vote for a Māori constituency, we would have to have a Māori constituency because he has no standing within Canterbury to elect Ngaitahu councillors.
So that's where we start to get into complexity of democracy and whakapapa ancestral rights, because that person living in Southland, being Ngaitahu, may also have, living in Canterbury from Southland, may have ancestral rights that are still here in Canterbury. So we go into a complexity of
here, and we're not actually, this is pretty straightforward, this stuff. So can I just push on with this and then have a discussion? Somebody that want to put the hand up for this, please move it. Thank you, Councillor East. Seconded by Councillor Sanko. Okay, now I'll open it up for debate. Councillor Karakia.
Kia ora tātou. I'm going, first of all, to appeal to my fellow councillors to support the two recommendations. And it's on the basis of these points. First of all, if you go and look at the number of Papatipu Runanga that responded to our call, there were 7. I've been active over the last sort of 48 hours, and I've the 3 that hadn't responded were Tuahuriri, Waihao, and Moiraki. So I've been in contact with an upoko, a chair of the Runanga, and a general manager, and those 3 actually have gone with the view, the opinion of the other 7. So what you have, first of all, is 100% of the 10 Papatipu Runanga within the takiwā of ECAN that are actually saying is that they don't support a Māori ward. The other part of it is to understand the Ngaitahu relationship with Whaka. And when you look at Whaka, there are 11 actually separate groups that make up Te Runanga or Whaka. I think the important thing is to understand the history of the relationship between Ngā Whaka and also Ngaitahu whānui. And it all comes back to aroha ki te tangata. every Māori that actually resides into the rohe of Ngāi Tahu, Pāti Mamoi, Waitaha, are actually under that guise of looking after those who live within our rohe, our tribal rohe, and also within our takiwa. When you also look at the support that Ngāi Tahu have given, and particularly in this city, you know, they gave land, and then they gave resources to build Ngā Hauewha National Marae, actually out east. The other part of this is that when you look at our relationship with Ngā Mātou Whaka, it is a relationship, and it's a close relationship. That's not taking away the fact that there are some Mātou Whaka, and I went out to actually try and engage with Mātou Whaka. I only engaged with one, Henare Edwards, from Te Tai Tūkara. And he said to me that, you know, he was contacted, and he responded, but he actually only responded to say that he'd received it. But his whakaaro was that, you know, he personally, he wasn't speaking on behalf of Ngā Mātou Whaka, but personally he would actually possibly support a Māori ward situation. So I just want to put that there because I think that's important in the next part of it, is because when we look at the themes, so David O'Connell actually quoted one of the themes, and this is really important, is that the 10 Papatupa Runanga, the consensus of it was, we have a Ngāi Tahu representation bill that we're still bedding in. And that is one of the reasons, but there's a couple of other reasons as well, actually 3 of them. And this is kind of a general consensus across the board. One is the fact that Ngāi Tahu are treaty partners, and our relationship is confirmed within the Ngāi Tahu Settlement Act. The second part of that is that Ngāi Tahu see our runanga as our local government, and they actually have Article 2 rights within the treaty. That's how they see it. And what is Article 2? It's about chiefly authority. It's about self-determination rooted in tikanga. And it's also about the protection of lands, forests and fisheries. So that's rangatiratanga. And the other one that a number of them struggled with was the Western construct, actually the likes of this within our takiwa. And so when you look on that wall and that journey, our 2-year journey, it's all about actually mana whenua. It's all about those relationships. So I'm just appealing to you to actually support this, because it supports what we actually are always saying, is that it's about our relationship with mana whenua. And the other part of it is that I want to make clear, it doesn't separate Ngā Mātou Whaka, because they have always in our thinking, and they share the values that we have, because that is actually their right, but they also understand the right to actually live down here within our tribal rohe. So I just wanted to make that appeal as a Ngāi Tahu councillor, or appointed councillor, however you want to see it. But that is my role here, to actually give you the feelings that come from our Papatupa Runanga. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Yeah, I'm really quite disappointed that we only enabled 2 weeks for a response from Te Waka Mana, to Mata Waka. And I'm actually really shocked that we haven't been fully engaged with them previously, because we should be working hard to reach underrepresented groups, and we know that this is an underrepresented group, and that should be a principle that we apply to our work across all of the multiple underrepresented groups that we don't typically hear from. So I hope that we will make use of those contacts that we now have. For me, I see this as two really separate issues. That we have a Ngāi Tahu Representation Act, which has brought us two mana whenua representatives to the table with full voting rights, and that for me, absolutely 100% supported, really, really important. And then we have elected representatives through this Western democracy, which is here in this form, for better or for worse, it is what it is, and there's 14 of us. And I know how quickly we can lose representation and a variable representation. So I look back to last term and we had 50% women, 50% men, and now we have 3 women at a table of 16. So that representation and the divergence of lived experience, etc., which I think is really important in a council, is not guaranteed. And I don't think that I could say 100% that the next elected council couldn't be represented by 100% Pākehā men. I don't think we're beyond that. That's certainly true of some of the regional councils across New Zealand. And so for me, a Māori ward does ensure that there is a diversity of representation, that there is an underrepresented group able to be at a table with some certainty. And so whilst I hear the arguments made and I understand, I think the fact that we've got a locked in mana whenua representation, and I very much hope that that doesn't get taken away, although I know it's been mooted through the new government's, during the election cycle, but I would also hope we'd have go at the very least back to Timatanga. So I don't see these two things as mutually exclusive, and I personally would like to be able to support Māori ward. And no disrespect to mana whenua and Runanga perspectives, but for me, that diversity of opinion and representation is actually really important and a value I stand by. So, kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you. Māori want to keep the whare ki tangata to te reti ahau. So I support the treaty, and I want to say thank you to te Nuku, because you've sort of allayed a few of the fears I had. I've been a bit of turmoil given that, not deeply, but I've had a relatively interesting relationship with people from Ngāhui Whā and Rehua, and I think of those, especially the trade training people who have come down and have become intergenerational citizens of this great province, great city. And you made me think, you're quite right about the contribution by not only Ngāi Tahu, but the Papatapi Runanga, because it's Tahu Pōtiki as you walk into Rehua. So that has allayed a bit of that fear, because as Councillor Southworth said, I'm very mindful that population-wise, there is a large number within Waitoha. And I just want to make sure that I'm doing justice to the people that feel living here, that they have representation. But equally, I feel a bit more confident now that you've said under your cloak, your umbrella, you're supporting them anyway. I would just digress slightly to address Councillor Southworth about diversity around the table. It's interesting, the number of people that are born overseas, who speak multi-languages, who identify other than he, him, she, her. So there is a face doesn't always represent diversity around the table. So I would just make that point. And kia ora again, I want to thank you for your contribution.
You, Councillor Swiggs.
Yeah, I'm gonna say a few things, because I've gone through this in quite a lot of depth, and I come from it from a multi-viewed point of view, being from whakapapa to te Atiawa. So obviously I have a view that's slightly different than a mana whenua view. So I've gone through quite a lot of things. I've gone through the Treaty of Waitangi. I've gone through the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. I've gone through the different Waitangi tribunal rulings. I've gone through, look, I've got 2 pages of notes here. I've gone through the Claims Act, the Ngāi Tahu Claims Act, and I've gone through the Representation Act, and I've gone through a whole lot of other things as well to come up with a kind of view to where I'm thinking here. So yes, I agree. Article 2 of the Waitangi Act does specifically refer to the rights and authority of Māori over their lands. There's two versions of an English version and a Māori version. And those two versions in Article 2 are slightly, they have some ambiguity in what they say. But it doesn't underestimate the principles of the partnership, the participation, protections that are generally seen for all Māori. The United Nations Declaration specifically talks about Indigenous peoples of the country. And then the Waitangi Tribunal has also sort of talked about Māori rights as a general thing beyond just mana whenua groups. And so the Manukau claim, 1985, found that Māori moving away from tribal areas doesn't deprive them of their Māori identity and rights. The 1986 claim, I don't need to worry about that one. And then you've got other ones, the Radio Spectrum Management Claim 99, the Freshwater Claim 2019, the Housing Policy Claim 2019, all talk about the Māori as a whole and ancestral connections to the lands of Aotearoa as New Zealand as a whole. Then I sort of looked at the Claim Settlement Act, and obviously the Claim Settlement Act and Nook has a lot more understanding than I suppose a few people here, but I looked at it and I sort of understood from the Settlement Act recognises that Ngāi Tahu rights is mana whenua, but a big part of it, the Settlement Act requires local authorities such as us to consult with Ngāi Tahu, but also provides the opportunities and making sure that other Māori are contributing to those processes as well. The Settlement Act looks at the region-wide water and it affects all Māori in the region. So this was something that I found quite interesting within that act, that it talked about all Māori in the region. Then our Representation Act talked about Ngāi Tahu having a dedicated seats, and as we know, we've got Nook and Yayan here. And that act itself also enables us to have a Māori seat in the constituency. So when I've gone through all of these things, it really does look at Māori as a whole. And that's where I kind of have landed my thoughts, Māori as a whole. And then I hear what Nook says, and then I hear what the Runanga are wanting, and I feel like there's almost a fear here that having an extra Māori seat will dilute the voice of Runanga, potentially. I think that was a fear that this council potentially had and other councils have had, especially around when they also put their, when we had the Ngāi Tahu Act come through here, there's always a fear of something different and how it works and whatnot. So I'm really torn on this decision because obviously I respect wholeheartedly the views of mana whenua and the journey that this council has undertaken with what we've got. But I'm also very conscious of our wider responsibilities to Māori as a whole, which all of these things that I've researched over the last couple of days point to. So it's leaving me in a really tricky position to make a call on this. My deep gut is telling me to vote for the Māori ward, which would be to vote against the recommendation. But my cognition and my thought process is to side with the mana whenua to understand and to bed in what we've got. Because there is a bigger risk here that I see, is if we do vote for a Māori ward, that central government may look at it and go, well, you don't need the other. And that's my biggest fear. And so from that point of view, that is the reason why I will support the resolution that's on the table. But I think we do need to be very, very careful and very conscious that we have a bigger, wider responsibility to all Māori, and we need to up our game on that.
Well said, Councillor Swiggs. Now, we are past half-past and we cannot use that resolution because unless we get an extension of time. And I think that this discussion has probably gone a bit longer. So I'm in your hands as we continue the discussion and come back to the resolution, because we can do that. And we've got Claire and Craig that want to speak. We could go to standing orders and say when we've got 3 against and 3 for, we can just go to the resolution, but we can't do that until we come back anyway. So we'll just continue this. Yes, okay, Claire.
Council Point. That's obviously second by Council Davies. All those
Look, I acknowledge the different views at the table, and I know I've probably wrestled with this a little bit myself, but I am going to support this resolution today. And I think for me, it's around acknowledging the journey that the organisation's come on in the partnership over the last 12, 13 years or more. And definitely, I think that I'm having some difficulty thinking about how we represent people at the table. I think we are all elected, and currently everybody has an opportunity to partake in that election process. And we must not forget that Māori are part of our community anyway. And I think that for me, it's just about acknowledging the special partnership that we've developed here. So there would be a whole lot of cascading events if we changed that we would have to go through as well. Well, thank you.
Tēnā koutou. Tuatahi kia koe nok tu tainoku mō tō kōrero honu I pāna tēnei kaupapa. Ai, tēnā koe, tēnā koe. And thank you to the rest of our councillors too for those that have spoken on this. Yes, a really good discussion. And thank you also, David, the team that have put the paper together and done the background work here. I'm really glad actually that we did go out and made the effort to reach out to the Ngā Mata Waka groups. I think that's a great step for this council. I think it's important. And yes, the time is not the best, but I think it has set up something good for the future too. And I do, think about what Dion has said as well, and I do have some feelings and thoughts that is important too going forward. But I'm also really proud of our current representation that we have in terms of our Ngāi Tahu representation that we've managed to get here at Environment Canterbury. It's well founded and it's well functioning, and it began during the time of the commissioners around 2010. So let's not forget that. There's a whole lot of history here that's led us, and people have said that. Claire said it, and Look said it, and look behind on our wall as well. And there's good reasons for that, and there's good reasons why Ngāi Tahu and the Papatopi Rūnanga have not previously supported Māori constituencies and continue not to. And it is partly because it doesn't get that treaty-based representation that you really need, and that's something that the Future for Local Government report well states, that's something that the Local Government Act needs to, and these electoral acts need to reflect better in the future. There's got to be representation for mana whenua around local government, not as well as, and that's what it says, as well as Māori, because there is those two differences there. And I think that's what the Papatopi Rūnanga have reflected back to us too in their comments, that they want to bed this in, the representation that we currently have, like I said, has been well founded and well functioning, but also look to the future and the next cycle of this, which is now much more easier done, because you can call for this more regularly now. So I think that's really important, and I think that's something that we can look at going forward. So I think that possibility is still there. And the other thing is that it doesn't guarantee even a Māori representative around this table. So to your point, Vicky, like, it's better, but of course anybody can stand in those seats. Yes, the voters are on the Māori roll, but the person that stands doesn't have to be, and doesn't have to be Māori. So there's sort of an issue there, but hey, that's all fair and love and war and democracy, so that's all good.
but it doesn't guarantee it, and so there are some issues with it, and there are some other challenges that we all face around how we go forward on these issues too. So I really do support the feedback that we've gathered, and I look forward to more engagement with Mātou Whaka in the future. And my hope is that we can have both going forward, because I think it is important. Likewise for other minority and ethnic groups, as well as gender, around the table. It's all important. So, I hope that democracy can be more sophisticated going forward. But I definitely support the resolution that we have. So, kia ora.
So I've got Councillor East to move this and Councillor Sunkel. They both have an opportunity to speak to this if they need to, or if they want to. Councillor East.
I think there's been a fair amount of discussion around the table, and I don't think I can add anything further.
Thank you. It's similar. A lot of sympathy for the conversation that Councillor Sweeks brought, and I guess it's given me some clarity in my thinking. But I recognise those challenges, and they are challenges that have been thinking through my own mind. So thank you.
Yeah, if I could just in conclusion, can I just echo what Craig said? Actually, I think it's been a really good debate, and there's been some clarity. And thank you, Councillor Swiggs, for what you said. A judicious look at what's in front of you and a decision. We must remember that we're probably ahead of the pack on this, and local government New Zealand rules around mana whenua don't necessarily represent where we are going with this, but we are being looked upon as being a sort of a bit of a beacon in this area. And I take the point about Māori Whaka, I really do, because the numbers Davo would suggest that there's a number of them around in Canterbury, so we need to consider that somewhere along the line. But when we went before the select committee on this process and talked about the reasons that we were doing this, I think they still exist for us, and so therefore I think, and it's tough to say that this is, if we had a Māori Ward, it'd be confusing, but I don't think it adds to what we're doing at the moment. It may do in the future, and we may have that opportunity, and your point's well made also, Vicky. So thank you for that. Thank you for the discussion. And I will just now put this to you. And you can go for a division if you want to think a division's important. I'm not suggesting we do that. All right. So that's on the screen in front of you and understood by everyone. So all those in favour, please say aye. All those against? Anyone abstaining? So do you want that noted, Vicky? Okay, so that's passed. Thank you. All right, so we'll come back at 10 past. We'll suspend the meeting till 10 past 1. All right, so we'll reconvening at 12 minutes past. 12 minutes past. And the next item is 8.7. Stephen, I think you're going to speak to that. So if you come forward, it's about the funding, extra funding for Wilding Pines.
Through you, Chair. This should be a reasonably straightforward and simple item. It's really about additional government funding that has been proposed from central government for our wild and conifer program of approximately $4.1 million to enable the organisation to receive that. It's not funding we had in our annual plan. We need approval from the council. So that's what the item's about. The funding is planned to be spent obviously on wild and conifer management and specifically on the maintenance of areas that have had control previously. So it's follow-up work, it's maintaining the gains of some of the work that's happened over the last few years. Just very briefly, the wild and conifer program, you will know this well, I'm sure, but I think it's a really great example of collaboration between central government, local government, and a whole range of other stakeholders and partners. It's got a national strategy. It's got a national governance group with all those representation around the table, and it comes with central government and local funding. And there's been a lot of work that's happened over the last few years. Our challenge going into the future is some of that central government funding is obviously dipping. So this additional contribution to this financial year's program will be welcome, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Edge, you had clarification question you were looking for in terms of the use of funds?
My query was going to be about what it was being used for, which is what you suggested, maintenance and making sure that stuff we've already cleared is cleared again.
I guess, Stephen, the question is, what's the quantum required to get the job done that we need to do? I know 4.1's a good additive there, but again, if we start doing this, brush fire funding for wilding pine control, we'll never get on top of the big knockdown that we weren't finished in the first lot. So have we got a quantum of money that's required in Canterbury or for the South Island?
Not necessarily for Canterbury or the South Island, but the central government amount of funding that they're putting into this has been baselined to $10 million. It probably needs another 10 million, needs to be about 20 on top of the local contributions across New Zealand. Canterbury has got the largest sort of wild and conifer program in the country, so we've been getting the lion's share of that central government funding. It's like anything with weed and pest control. Once you start, you cannot stop. You have to keep going, otherwise you lose all your investment. I was 8 years on the National Wild and Conifer Governance Group, involved in the development of the strategy and getting the first lot of central government funding into this program. At that time, and I'm not sure what the updated numbers are, but the amount of new wild and conifer establishment across New Zealand was 90,000 hectares a year. And we're just on the top now of getting to a point where, as long as there is about $20 million spent nationally, we'll be able to get it to a point where you can maintain it. And that looks like handing it back to landowners.
Okay, and before I go to you, Nick, my second question is, in terms of the money that we're using for wild and conifer, does that include the Linds and Dockland, or is that separate funding that they would require themselves?
It includes the Linds and Dockland, yeah, and remember they contribute out of their baseline funding to the program, but we're the regional agency that coordinates all the management.
Yeah, we did some calculations with Mackenzie with Ross Ivy and a few of those commit people in that wilding pine free trust, and we reckon in the Twizel area we need $10 to $12 million for the next 5 years to get on top. A year, 10 to 12 a year.
But it may be useful, since you're a wilding pine expert, Steve, to look at the program that was envisaged was the knockdown and then a cleanup, and then it went back to agencies and landholders. Is that right?
That's the strategy, yeah, that's exactly right.
How far through that knockdown would we be? Are we 50% of the way through there, do you think?
Look, that's a good question in Canterbury. I'm just not close enough to the detail now, sorry. Yeah, but we're well and truly on the path. There is, over the last 10 years, probably in the order of a couple of $100 million being spent on this.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify the question, I think it was about DOC's participation. When I was down there the other day, Ross Ivy was saying that most of the wilding pines you can see as you drive through the Mackenzie are on DOC land. They are controlling their own issue. The problem, they are fully cooperating and taking their responsibilities as landowners properly.
Through the chair, so the national program, and this is the power of it really, is the coordination of the program in terms of each area has got a working group that coordinates the overall management regardless of land tenure. So the department are definitely doing their piece, but it is part of a broader program with ourselves, with private landowners, with Linds.
Yeah. The extra 4.1 million. There's no operational cost that's borne to us to administer that.
Through the chair, we have a wild and conifer management team. and there's no additional costs of administering this this extra funding. It will mostly go to contractors for work on the ground.
Kia ora, thanks. I've just got a question about Environment Canterbury land. How are we doing as far as wilding control on the land that we're vested with?
Through the chair, so we treat our land in terms of the priority areas within Canterbury and the approach that we take with wild and conifers, which is all about starting with outlier populations first, starting with the spread, to ensure that those trees don't get to coning age, because as soon as they do, then you've got another source population that then spreads, and seeds can blow a very, very long way. So essentially starting with those outliers and working back to the source, that's the strategy. And so we apply that approach to our land just like any other land in the region.
So that being the case, it's highly likely as responsibility for control moves back to landowners, we'll be requiring to have a fund set up to ensure that we are doing our bit for our land. Is
that would be something that we do have budgets for those sorts of things within our current budgets, and we, in terms of our wild and conifer program at the moment, the ratepayer contribution for the program in Canterbury is $1.5 million.
Thank you, Stephen. I think we can move to the recommendation now. So somebody would like to move that. Thank you, Councillor Ward, and seconded by Councillor Burns. Any discussion, any further discussion on that? I think it's a good initiative, and it's good that we've got this extra funding, and obviously the job isn't finished. And you know, the feeling could be, oh, you're getting more money, it's finished. But I think the scale of what Stephen's described and also what Nick's added to is something that we just got to keep at, actually. So, yeah. All right, so we've got to move it, and second to Councillor Ward, second by Councillor Burns. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, that's carried. Now, moving to the 8.8, I think it's 8.8, 8.8, yeah, which is the Chair's report, and I'll take that as read. That's not, it's got a few headlines in there, but and make some comment. So, of course, the first bullet point under 3 is we're waiting for this to happen. We're speculating as we go about what might happen, but essentially, we will know more about this, hopefully, on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, whenever. Future for local government, that's reached the point where tomorrow on Friday, a paper should be circulated to all local government members about the consensus that was achieved through that group that I was a part of, and then a wider sort of a view, 150 local government members. Yane was part of that. Patrick Lindsay, who's staff member sitting down the back, was part of that process. And it was one of those things that not everyone's going to get what they got, but the broad consensus that there's an opportunity to have a discussion with an incoming government. Results of what you see tomorrow will be voted for in a special meeting of LGNZ, and then put forward that position, once agreed by members, will be put forward to central government as a negotiating position of those 16 or 17 points that were made. Some have got major support, some haven't. Some things are not going to work. People along the way have made their own decisions about what may be acceptable, may not be acceptable to a new government, given the fact that we know basically what the new government's going to be. But at the end of the day, local government New Zealand is going to take a position, and hopefully with the new minister have a negotiating point with the new minister. So this is a door opener with the new government with some sort of consensus around the position. What are they doing?
Adjusting the temperature, Chair.
Up or down? All right, that's good. So, yeah.
We will carry on, councillors. We will
The
carry
four monthly report from Local Government New Zealand for member councils is attached. for your consideration, and no doubt you would have read that. And if there's any questions on that, we'll try and ask them. And I guess the big event for us and for Ngāi Tahu themselves is awaiting the announcement of the new Kai Whakahare, Deputy Kai Whakahare of Ngāi Tahu. And we wish, from my perspective, I wish Ngāi Tahu all the best in those decisions and deliberations. And no doubt that'll be an interesting process for them. So any comment on any of this? Not really. Not really. So I'll put the recommendation up then. Sorry, this isn't a bit more informative, but there's a lot of things to happen before we can actually put much more detail around it. All right, so I will move that.
Is it in here? I didn't see it. Was there any update on the Christchurch Foundation? Okay, thank you.
We can get an
email. No, Risen. Thank you.
Just in this, do we ever still get a chief executive report? Or did we ever? Yeah. No, it's just for visibility.
Moved by Councillor Pauling, seconded by Councillor Sanko, that we go into public excluded. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. So thank you. So